Good evening, everyone. Welcome to A Traditionalist Catholic. My name is Billy Sewer. Just wanted to riff a little bit on what was going on with me, for me, the last week or so. Started off with reading an article by Bishop Schneider, an article of Bishop Schneider's published in LifeSite News, where Bishop Schneider had said the crisis in the church is the logical conclusions of philosophical and theological modernism, with the chief error being relativism. So, inspired by that, I did a bit of a dive into modernism, starting with like liberal Catholicism, basically like starting with Pope St. Pius X's 1907 encyclical Pascendi. And then going through Lamentabile Sane, the syllabus of modernist errors, the syllabus of errors, Pius IX, 1864, Mirari Vos, the first papal encyclical in like 1832, I want to say, I'm not sure yet, where the Pope condemned liberalism in the immediate aftermath of the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars. And then Humani Generis, parts of Humani Generis, where Pius XII in 1950 was condemning the use of new concepts from modern philosophies, like say existentialism. He actually named existentialism in the document in the encyclical. He condemned the use of new concepts from these philosophies in order to explain the Catholic faith. So based on all that, and also reading Father Wiltrin's book, "The Rhine Flows into the Tiber," blow by blow account of what happened at Vatican II, all the votes, all politicking, all that stuff. So then it got me to where I want to know. Well, what is the current that these liberals at Vatican II? What was the current of thought amongst liberal Catholics as of 1962, the beginning of Vatican II? So going back over at all this, essentially, the crisis in the church is a crisis of the Catholic faith mixed with liberal philosophy, like the French liberalism of the French Revolution, 1789, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, so on and so forth, coupled and with the philosophies like Descartes, Kant, Hegel. And so basically the church for the church since 1789 has been battling these Enlightenment liberal philosophies, these subjectivist philosophies, where it's focused on the now, it's focused on man's liberty, his freedom to do this or that, unrestricted by, or that a little bit of the man's freedom to do this and that, as he wills. Now, and Catholics from the French Revolution onward, we're absorbing these ideas. Like I said, Descartes, Kant, Hegel, the liberal principles of the French Revolution of 1789, and later on the 1848 Springtime of the Nations, and trying to take these principles, these philosophies, and reconcile them with the Catholic, and mix them with the Catholic faith, like how how scholasticism had taken what was good of Aristotle and combined them with the Church Fathers, the theological tradition from the Church Fathers and Platonism that we had from the times of, say, St. Augustine, St. Jerome, onward until the 12th century, and then there was the synthesis of bringing the Aristotelian philosophy, and then thus we have Scholasticism, Thomism. There you go. And then Catholics try to do something similar, absorbing ideas of liberal philosophy and the Enlightenment philosophy that lies at the basis of the French Revolution, 1789, and later on Springtime of Nations, 1848. And over time, Catholics were absorbing these ideas and trying to either reconcile them with the Catholic faith and or use these ideas to defend the Catholic faith against liberal Protestants. And unfortunately, these Catholics were losing their Catholic faith because adapting these ideas. And then the church, from like 1832 onward, if I remember the year Morari Vos was promulgated correctly, and if y'all wouldn't mind correcting me if I'm wrong. And then the church was combating this all the way from 1832 to 1962. First came to a crisis. The liberalism in the church, liberalism in the church first came to a head, late 19th, early 20th century under Pope St. Pius X. Pascendi lamentabili sane, the crackdown on modernism under this saintly pope, and then there was then that continued on from 1914 to 1930s, and then there was this nouvelle théologie, like Henri de Labat, Yves Congar, Chenu, Hans von Balthasar, Hugo Rahner. They were getting together and they were getting their ideas together. They were actually under suspicion. Some of them were condemned. Well, some of them were being condemned. Like there's some of them were deprived of teaching posts. Otherwise, some of their books were put on the Index of Forbidden Books. And then that continued on into the 50s. And then and then at the same time, there's also the ecumenical movement. Catholics, liberal Catholics, wanted to do ecumenism with the Protestants and other things, and with Protestants and other separated Christians. But that was condemned under Motalium Annos, under if I remember correctly, it was Pius XI had condemned that. And then there was the liturgical movement where it had gone south by the mid 20th century, by the 1940s, I want to say, it was starting to go haywire. And then the 50s were going on, and then there was Father Courtney Murray. He was an American Jesuit. He was writing on relationships between church and state. He was commanded to cease writing on church and state relations by Pius XII in 1955. 7 years later, he was called in as a peritus and was the author of Dignitatis Humanae, and also all the other Nouvelle Théologie theologians were periti at the council. Yves Congar de Lubac had an influence in Lumen Gentium. He had an influence in Gaudium et Spes. Hugo Rahner had an influence in the chapter on the Blessed Virgin Mary in Lumen Gentium, if I remember correctly. And of course, there was Father Courtney Murray. He had wrote Dignitatis Humanae. There's Father Gregory Baum. He was a Jewish convert to the faith, ordained to the priesthood. Wrote Nostra Aetate. Later on, left the priesthood and ended up living in a homosexual relationship. And God willing, he repented. He repented at least on his deathbed. And reading Father Wilkern's book, I'm seeing a constant refrain that I see in amongst the liberals was ecumenical. Father Schielebeck's, a Dutch Dominican. He had loved Sacrosanctum Concilium, and he hated the four or solidly orthodox preparatory schemas. Those were thrown out, and basically I discerned, and then that Father Hans Kung had in a press statement after the first session of Vatican II, he had said, and I paraphrase, that what was once the dream of a small avant-garde in the church, because of the council, its spirit now pervades the church. So what I'm seeing in Vatican II, that the spirit of Vatican II is a liberal spirit of change. And what I see in the text of Father Wiltgren's book is, you see the basics of the Novus Ordo. You see all these talks about this and that. The liberals basically just came in, blitzkrieged the council, took down the influence of the Roman Curia, and the conservatives took control of the commissions by having their members elected to the theological commissions that would be in control of revising and drafting the preparatory schemas and drafting new ones. And all the liberal prelates had to do on the council, all the liberal council fathers had to do, which were centered around an alliance of French, Dutch, and German bishops and their hierarchies. And they came in knowing what they wanted to do, how they're going to do it. And they did just that. They took control of the council like that in the very first session. Later on, like say around 64, like 63, maybe 64, the conservatives started organizing, but they were already clearly in the minority. So at the most, what the conservatives could do is just maybe rein in, have the schemas later on became the constitutions and decrees of Vatican II, have that softened so that way they're not as liberal as what they would have been if there wasn't at least any conservative opposition in the council. So reading those accounts, I'm seeing what we see in the post-conciliar crisis, So that's my initial take on what the crisis in the church is that basically what we see in the lead up from the French Revolution all the way to 1962, and then all of a sudden Vatican II, the liberals got control of the council and pretty much dictated the council's agenda. With at least some resistance from conservatives that managed to slow down or at least managed to tone down what the liberals wanted to. The liberals didn't get exactly everything what they like. We softened it a little bit, but they're still liberal documents. So a lot of food for thought there, and gives me a good sense. I think a good sense of where we're at in the church. We're facing liberal Catholicism in the church. That is the crisis, because liberal Catholics, for a century, there's a fermentation of liberalism in the amongst Catholics, and Vatican II basically they got control. They pushed. They acted on their liberal ideas, and that's what we see in the crisis in the church, the banalization of the liturgy, the breakdown in catechesis, the crisis of in the sacred priesthood. What we see is a result of that, and all this, and trads who want to hold on to the traditional mass, catechisms like Trent, Baltimore, St. Pius X. We're not the ones being divisive. I mean, neocons might wring their hands and go, "Oh, you can't say this, you can't say that. You're being divisive. You're scandalizing the faithful." Look, if I'm seeing a priest denying church perennial church teaching, de fide dogmas, like Father James Martin, he outright denies, he outright contradicts perennial church teaching, de fide dogmas. I mean, whenever you see Father Boomer preaching boomer leftism, or Father James Martin preaching the rainbow agenda, that's not preaching the catechism. That is liberals in the church preaching what they want to change the church. And Catholics who are faithful to what the church has always taught can never change. It's infallible. We're the loyal Catholics. We're the loyal, faithful Catholics, just holding on to what we know is the deposit of faith in the face of heretics and the heterodox liberals that want the church to preach the same thing as secular liberals. Except these are Catholics in the church. They're operating. They're masking masking leftist ideology under the name Catholic. So, now that's just the basis of what I have right now. So I want to riff on for a bit. Later on, I might go ahead and start doing like some commentaries on some major points, like what's the basic points of what modernism that Pope St. Pius X condemned. What is the Nouvelle Theologie? What happened at Vatican II? Also, at some point, I will be doing a video on the Little Office of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the traditional one, for those who are interested. So that way anybody who's interested, I can break down how to pray the Little Office, and hopefully it makes it easier for you. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like the content. And if you have any comments, please let me know. Please let me know in the comments below. And just remember, Christ is King, not only of individual hearts, but also of governments and societies. That the only peace there will be in our society is whenever we restore the church with the social kingship of Christ. When societies obey the law of Christ, that they acknowledge him as king, render him the obedience and worship that is due him, that's when we're going to see peace. That's when we're going to have peace in our society, because peace is the fruit of justice. The only justice, the only freedom is God. That's the social kingship of Christ. The state recognizing and submitting to the divine authority of the church. Thank you very much. Have a good night. And remember, Vivo Cristo Rey. God bless you, Mary keep you. And see you next time.